Wonderful opportunity that you have here. This is a debate for the District 1, the candidates running for District 1 council seat. As you know, you all voted on term limits, so your current council member, Reggie, is not going to be able to run for re-election. So what you have here is very unusual. You have no incumbents here up on this stage. All of them are people who are first-time candidates for the District 1 council seat. And we're very happy to have all of them here. I think one is not here, could not make it tonight. Do you have a statement? Do you want to read it now?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abby Milstein, and I'm a current trustee of the West Manor Citizens Association, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate you coming out on this beautiful evening and spending some time with us. We just received a statement from Dalvin Osorio, who's the 2018 Democratic candidate for Montgomery Council. He said he is very sorry he won't be able to come tonight, but he had to miss tonight's event because one of the youth on his caseload ran away from their foster parents' home, and they're now trying to locate them. So he's doing good work. Unfortunately, he won't be with us tonight.
Okay, thank you. I neglected to introduce Abby. Abby is with the West Manor Citizens Association, the Greater Farmland Civic Association, which I'm president, and Rich is my name. We are co-sponsoring this event to allow you guys an opportunity right in your own community to see the people who are vying for your vote on June 26th to replace Reggie on the County Council. So I'm going to talk about a few ground rules, but first I think we have a few other candidates out here. If you are here, if you want to raise your hand and be recognized. I know that Mark Corman is here for District 16. I'm sorry, I think Neil Greenberger is an at-large candidate for the County Council, is also here. And Samir Paul is outside, I believe he's also a candidate for District 16. I'm sorry, you are? Okay, we have a District 3 Board of Education person here. So that's great. A couple of ground rules before we get going. Abby and I are going to be asking a whole bunch of questions here. What our goal is to have a dialogue here rather than just go down the list of the tables and have each person respond. There are two microphones on this table, one microphone on that table. What we're going to do is we're going to ask a question, and then we're going to allow 5 minutes for all of you, each one of you, whoever wants to respond to the question has an opportunity to do so. You can rebut each other if you want. If you want to respond to another candidate's questions, feel free to do so. Also, we have cards floating around in the audience. Toby Levin, who organized this thing, so a big round of applause for Toby. He's on the board of the Greater Farmland Civic Association. And Sharon is out there from Lux Manor. She's also one of the organizers, so please give her a round. The president of the Lux Manor Citizens Association, sorry. There are cards. Toby has cards, so if you have specific questions that you would like to have us ask the candidates, please fill out a card and hand it back to her. She will then pass the questions up to us, and so we can make sure that all the questions are asked. We have a timekeeper down here, Susan Wyman, who's going to be telling the candidates when their time is up. Actually, the only time is up is you have an opening statement of 1 minute and a closing statement of 1 minute. Other than that, she's going to tell you when the 5 minutes are up for the particular question. So with that said, I think we will move on to the questions for the candidates at this point.
About the introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your opening statements, please. Each of you gets 1 minute for an opening statement. You have a microphone there if you choose to. If not, you can just yell and scream as much as you like. So we'll start with Meredith down here on this end.
Can you all hear me? Yeah. Good.
It's so great to see you all here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Meredith Wellington. I'm running for County Council right here in District 1. I served on the planning board for 8 years. I'm an attorney. I'm interested in parks, ball fields for kids. I hope all of you got my baseball bats that I'm giving out. And I want to work hard for the community as I did when I was on the planning board. I am not accepting any donations from developers or any developer interests. So that means the companies, their attorneys, their spouses, and I have actually returned developer contributions. I have been talking to so many of you as I go around knocking on doors and at these meetings, and I've learned a lot. I've learned that, once again, that all politics is local, and we need to do a much better job on the local level. You need to feel and know that you have a representative that will respond to you immediately and who to call, because it's very hard in the county to find out who to call. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pete Fosselman, and I'm also running for County Council District 1. The three areas that I decided to focus on for this position, if I'm elected, based on my door-knocking feedback, are the aging population, aging in place, business growth, specifically small business growth, and then the third priority I'd like to focus on is balanced land use. I am a land use planner and civil engineer by profession and education. I am a former mayor of Kensington. I was elected 5 times with about 70% of the vote, walked our master plan through the approval process. I also served under Governor Martin O'Malley as his Deputy Secretary of State, overseeing such divisions as the charities, nonprofits, prisoner extraditions, domestic violence, and human trafficking. And I would like to ask for your vote come June 26th or early voting, which starts June 14th. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Friedson. I grew up here. Better?
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening. All right. I'm Andrew Friedson. I grew up here in District 1. I live in District 1. I'm running to be the council member from our community. I've dedicated my professional life to solving problems and improving how government works, working at the state level as a senior policy advisor to the comptroller, scrutinizing billions of dollars of public contracts and holding public agencies accountable. I was on the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, helping to support small businesses, mostly women-owned and minority-owned small businesses that lacked adequate access to private capital and provide them with opportunities and create jobs. I currently serve as chair of the Montgomery County Collaboration Council for Children, Youth, and Families, which just came from our board meeting, to provide programming for our at-risk youth. I want to bring that same approach to the county council, to bring people together to get things done. I hope to have your support and look forward to having a discussion about the Montgomery County squeeze, the squeeze on our roads, our schools, and our families. Thank you very much.
Hello? No?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out. It's very important for you to know us and to know about us a little bit more than what you get in the little glossy brochures. My name is Anna Sol Gutierrez, and I'm a state delegate right now. I've been at the state legislator for the past 16 years. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, so we balance the budget for the state of Maryland. And after many years there, you really learn public policy, you learn budgeting, you know what is effective government. So with that experience, I want to come back after those 16 years and dedicate my experience and my knowledge to Montgomery County. It is very important that we elect in this election someone with a lot of experience. We have 33 candidates running for 4 positions at large, and we have 8 candidates here. So I hope that you will be able to see what we each bring to you. Thank you.
So is it warm enough? So I actually used to be an HVAC mechanic, but I am not going to pull a Bill Cook and fix the problem. Bill fixed our sound system last night. My name is Jim McGee, and I'm running for Montgomery County Council in District 1. I no longer am an HVAC mechanic. That's how I got started out in the union. But I currently administer a $180 million healthcare benefit plan and report to a board of labor and management. I'm also involved with 2 committees at the state level as part of the Maryland's hospital global budgeting process. And I'm on the National Steering Committee of the Labor Campaign for Single Payer. And just this afternoon, was meeting downtown with, to discuss next steps on the struggle for Medicare for All. As part of the leadership of the anti-nuclear organization, we built a passive solar home in the 1980s. I was political director of my union, and I'm running out of time, but I'm also running for county council. I'm asking for your support on June 26th. Thank you.
My name is Reggie Oldak. I want to thank Lux Manor and Greater Farmland for giving us this opportunity. We all want good schools, traffic relief, and a responsive government that gets things done. After a career in law policy and advocacy, I know I have the skills to safeguard the county's finances while reflecting your priorities. I'm a tax lawyer with experience at the IRS and in private practice. I've worked in Annapolis as a legislative aide, and I've worked at the county councils. I'm also a champion for women, families, and vulnerable members of our community. I know how important it is to work with our nonprofits to protect our safety net programs. I've served as chair of our regional Planned Parenthood, senior counsel at the National Women's Law Center, and president of Montgomery County's Commission for Women. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
I'm just going to stand up so I can get a look at everybody. How's everybody doing? My name is Bill Cook. Sorry, too much?
No, a little bit in between.
In between.
There you go.
Split the difference?
Yeah.
My name is Bill Cook, and I'm not your typical candidate. I'm not a political insider. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a wealthy bureaucrat. And I think that's important because our democracy works best when we have people from all walks of life representing us in government. And the reason that I'm running for county council is we need to do something about the land use decisions. The development that's been going on in our county is wreaking havoc on our schools. Our schools in District 1 will be 160% over capacity by the year 2020. It's also causing the problems we see, the congestion on our roadways. We need to make sure that development is paying its fair share, that we're collecting impact taxes, that we're closing loopholes, to make sure that we have the money we need to build the schools and the roads, to make sure that we don't lose the quality of life that we're accustomed to here in Montgomery County. Once again, my name is Bill Cook. I hope you'll vote for me and look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
Okay, first 5-minute question. The Walter Johnson cluster schools have been overcrowded for years, with many schools having to add portables and use closets in order to accommodate the ever-increasing school population. Classroom sizes have been impacting the quality of the educational experience and attention paid to individual students, particularly ESOL and special needs children. What specific solutions would you propose for addressing this issue? And one of the follow-up questions would be, would you be considering redistricting? Go ahead.
Is this on? Hello?
Yes, I have very specific ideas of what to do about the school overcrowding because I fought this issue when I was on the planning board. First, we need to change the school test. Schools have not been able to adequately estimate how many kids are going to be going to the schools. Their numbers are always too low. Then, in addition to that, we need to make sure that they don't use this thing called placeholders, which what happens is once the school is overcrowded, instead of letting the area go into moratorium, they use a placeholder, which is a phantom project that says there'll be a project within the 5 years of the CIP, so there's no moratorium. We need to stop using those placeholders. But we also have to deal with our master plan. So the master plan for White Flint did not address the needs of the schools for Walter Johnson. We need to locate land for the school and put that in the master plan. We need to make sure that we have a plan that's in the master plan to deal with the overcrowding. We haven't done these things, and we now see the consequences. I am concerned that we are racing towards a tipping point when it comes to this lack of infrastructure and our budget needs.
Gutierrez?
Yes. Thank you.
it's working. One of the things I was not able to tell you during the introduction was that I was served on the school board for 8 years, representing this district, representing the Walter Johnson cluster and BCC. I attended BCC. The last part of your question is not up to the council to redistrict. It is the responsibility of the school board. And I sat through many of those decisions, probably some of the more difficult decisions ever made, because everybody's affected. Everybody has an opinion. So you try to stay away as much as possible from redistricting. It's not the first solution. However, the main critical reason of why I'm running is because of the schools. I believe that we absolutely need to address the overcrowding. It is now at a level of quality that's below when I served. I was in 1990-98. I have limits and she didn't.
5 minutes.
Yeah, no.
1 minute.
1 minute per
Go ahead.
Oh,
Take another 30 seconds.
Okay.
it did seem.
Okay, what we have to do, first of all, is get money for school construction. At the state level, there is major initiatives now being made to increase the amount of money for school construction. However, Montgomery County never plays the game in a fair way. They do not treat us in a fair way. So my presence on the county council is going to be dedicated to ensuring that we get our fair share, not only for schools, but for so many other funding that is available for us. So school construction will help. In the meantime, we need to go back to policies where we had at least 2 adults, especially in the early grades, a paraeducator. Those were cut as we started cutting the school budget. So I know what we can do, and we must do it.
Okay, Mr. Fosselman.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I think Ms. Oldak had her hand up before all of us did. But before I give the floor to her, or you give the floor to her, a couple of us are confused as to what the rules are this evening. We didn't realize, we thought we had 5 minutes to sort of share the microphone.
Yeah.
If we have 1 minute each and you can do the math, how are we all going to get to respond to the question?
Well, we'll just do it as we go along.
Well, what are the rules?
Yeah.
The rules were 5 minutes per question, and we would have like
5 minutes for
discussion.
everybody?
For each
That's not
person?
gonna work.
All right.
1 minute.
All right, then we'll do 1 minute per person, then we'll
Okay.
get to 7.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Reggie. So I am someone that opposes the placeholders like Meredith spoke about. I also am one that would stand up and support moratoriums. I think the moratoriums are put in place for a specific reason. We need to abide by them. But setting those 2 items aside, I've been working with some folks at the county executive's office on a formula called LEARN, and the acronym stands for Local Education Resource Needs. And it starts the master plan process at the very beginning. The fees are paid prior to the builders taking occupancy, or their clients taking occupancy of the housing units. Then the county has the money and the school board has the money in the bank to make the additions to build the new schools that we need. And I think LEARN will work. I've got information on my website about it, and I'm happy to address it to anyone that has any questions further. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Oldak.
Thank you. First, I want to tell you my kids went through public schools. They both graduated from Whitman, and they're grown now, but we moved here from Virginia because of the public schools. I want to make sure that everybody has the chance to get the same quality education that my kids did. Excuse me. I think it is critical that we make these decisions about how we're going to deal with schools and traffic before development is approved. But in the meantime, we have to address what are we going to do about the overcrowding and about the large classrooms at every level, whether it's ESOL or people with special needs or the elementary kids or high school. The teachers can't cope and the kids need smaller classes. So we do need to address that, maybe put in some paraeducators. I have talked to Jack Smith, the superintendent, about the possibilities regarding getting more schools, alternative methods, innovative plans. He says they are looking at using existing building stock, about how they can redo the buildings so that we can have the proper school facilities, and maybe something innovative can be done. And I think that we need to look at best practices around the country. Thank you.
Anyone else? Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all agree on the moratorium issue. I think we all agree. we agree that this is the proper length to hold it from my mouth. I'm a product of Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm the proud son of a Montgomery County Public School teacher, a PTA president. Our schools are absolutely critical, and they're definitely overcrowded, particularly here in District 1. We absolutely have to solve the problem. It's one of the reasons why I'm running, to ease the squeeze on our schools, our roads, and our families. That is specifically what I'm talking about. But I do think it's a little bit disingenuous to suggest that the master plan process will build new schools. There's only one way to build new schools. It's to fund the building of new schools. And I will absolutely make it a top priority in the budget, my first, second, and third capital priority for school construction. It's an area that I've worked on at the state level. We need more school funding. We need a greater share, as Anna said, from the state level. We also need more funding in our county budget, and we need it to be a greater priority. It hasn't been. Just to give you an example, White Oak was in moratorium for 19 years, didn't build a school. So moratorium doesn't solve the problem on its own. We need funding.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Wellington, you can respond to that.
I want to respond to this idea that the master plans don't build the schools. The master plan is the planning tool to set out the when and which schools will be built and at what time. And so, yes, it is important. And not only that, master plans can have attached to them actual dollar amounts that will be spent on the items that are in the plan for the CIP, the capital improvement program. So that's why it's so important that these things are in the master plan, because that's the planning tool that the county is going to use when it starts making its budget.
Okay, Mr. McGee.
So I'd like to echo Andrew's position. It's one thing to put a plan on paper, but to enact it, you need to fund the plan. I agree that overcrowding is a major issue. It's a major issue throughout the county, and I think that we need to pace our development so that it doesn't get ahead of our infrastructure, not just school infrastructure, but all sorts of the rest of infrastructure, transit infrastructure, utility infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. My son graduated from Whitman, just like with Reggie's daughter. So we moved here from Pennsylvania. We moved specifically to this area because of the schools. It is the one aspect of Montgomery County, not the only aspect, but clearly sets us apart from the rest of the country in many ways. So we want to do everything we can to maintain the quality, and maintaining the quality is an architectural issue by building schools and an academic issue.
Bill, do you have something to say?
Yeah. So I think we need to take stock of where we're at on this issue. We have dug ourselves into a hole with the capacity for our schools. And this problem pervades past the schools that are overcrowded. If you look at places like Poolsville High School, which is the #1 school in the state, the school is falling apart. It's not overcrowded, it's a magnet school, but the school itself is older than I am. There's holes in the walls, the plumbing doesn't work, and the reason they won't get funding anytime soon is because all the other schools are overcrowded. So we need to stop digging ourselves into this hole, and by doing that, we need to ask the developers to pay their fair share, to pay the impact taxes that are due, to close the loopholes that people have mentioned already. That's how we stop digging. Beyond that, we need to make school capacity a priority in the county's budget. Our budget grows by about 4% each year. 2% of that is eaten up by inflation, which leaves us about $100 million each year in sort of discretionary funding. And I think if we forego any additional services, we put that money towards school capacity, then we can dig ourselves out of this hole and make sure that we have the school system that our kids deserve.
I'm going to throw out one follow-up. The county council passed a couple of master plans recently. Rock Spring, Whiteland, too. Dr. Whiteland said that schools are a priority for new development, but that's about as far as it goes. How do you think that the county council should be addressing the language that's in the master plans?
Again, if I can just clarify. The master plans and the county council do not make those decisions. There is a capital budget process, a 6-year capital budget process that the school system has to be prepared to present and update every year. None of these decisions are made from one year to the other. That's why, unfortunately, you have to wait your turn in line until your school and your renovation or your increase comes up. In the meantime, what happens? You get more portables. What is happening in the down county, in the huge overcrowded schools, is unbelievable. I invite you to drive down to Rock Creek Forest and Rolling Terrace. There is no yard. The kids are sitting and playing on one swing set that is in the corner. So it is the school board that has to make the decision, but it's the county council that has to provide the resources. So you can't do it without money, and that's what it's our responsibility to do. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to respond to that?
Yes, I'd like to comment on the most recent master plan. Well, first of all, the original White Flint plan failed to locate a school in the plan, and we're suffering the consequences even now. So the master plan sets aside the land. What happens is, when I served on the planning board, I worked on 11 different master plans that were enacted. The planning board staff goes to the school staff and says, what are your needs going to be? Because until recently, plans had to be in balance. When I say in balance, that means that the plan had to show how you would meet school needs while you're adding more development, and it would show how you're going to meet transportation needs. We've sort of abandoned that in the recent master plans. But I want to compliment the citizens and the people who work so hard in this community to get the requirement in the subdivision staging policy that, first of all, you could go into moratorium with one elementary school, and second, that land would be a priority and schools would be a priority instead of affordable housing.
Okay, Ms. Oldak, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, very quickly, I want to agree with what Anna said about the process for this and where the school board and the council members take their place. But I also want to say, since you mentioned schools in other parts of the county, that Walter Johnson, where we are, this cluster is one of the most crowded in the county.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
I think, Mr. Fosselman, you had something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you.
Close this out.
I agree with what Meredith had to say, although I will note, I believe there was an elementary school stipulated in the master plan for White Flint on the White Flint Mall, but now with Amazon possibly coming, I'm not sure what that situation will be. But in reference to the Rock Spring master plan, I think one thing that should be done, which has been done in the city of Alexandria, is with Marriott moving from Rock Spring to downtown Bethesda, there's going to be an empty office building sitting there. That office building could be converted into a school for a lot less money, just like the city of Alexandria did with the building that they recently won an award for. And I think that's a form of recycling, and I think it's a good use of the public school funds.
Thank you all for your responses. I apologize for the little inadequacies there. I think we figured it out. If you have any questions, obviously you won't stop to ask us, so that's great. We're going to move on to another topic now. This topic has to do with infrastructure and development in our community. And it's a little bit of an intro here, so bear with me, but the questions are very important. About your views on funding much needed infrastructure to meet the needs of the planned school construction on Tilden Lane, many of which you have traveled on to get here tonight. Our Tilden Middle School, currently over 900 students, will be moving back to its original location in the community of Lux Manor, and it will be rebuilt to serve approximately 1,850 students. Adjacent to it will be a new co-located school, Rock Terrace, which will have the ability to serve more than 300 special needs students moving from its current location in Rockville. Lux Manor Elementary School will be revitalized and expanded from its current approximate 475 students to serve over 750 students. Despite the near doubling of enrollment for these three schools, all located within a block of each other, there appears to be no coordination with MCDOT on companion infrastructure needed to keep our children and adult cyclists safe and our walkers safe from speeding vehicular traffic. In order to handle the impact of increased traffic on our H sewer and water lines under Tilden Lane. Here's the question. What specific infrastructure improvements would you support to address this very serious problem? Jim.
Is this working? Okay. So, one of the issues that I hear constantly when I'm knocking on doors is the ability to cross streets safely and the ability to have their kids walk to school. First off, I'm not sure I understand the logic of co-locating 3 schools to 3 all together.
Co-located and there's one across.
Okay. I call that co-locating. You know, driving through here, I did not see a whole lot of sidewalks. So I think sidewalks are critical for pedestrian safety. I think bike paths are critical for bike safety. So I think if we want to reduce congestion, one of the ways we can reduce congestion is have our kids walk to school. You know, when it's reasonable to do so. But I mean, there's a lot of places in this county where you're within walking distance of a place, but it's not safely walkable. And I think that's an important distinction.
Meredith?
Yes, this is a very important question and an important issue because the devil's in the details, and it's very important to get this right for school kids. So the first thing that I would do is I would recommend, I'm sure the school system does this, that they talk to Montgomery County DOT about what they believe their needs would be, and they need to work out a plan for the circulation of both cars to drop off the children, for the children to walk to school in a safe pattern. This is going on now with Rosemary Hills, which is being impacted by the Purple Line, and there's safety issues there. And they work with DOT, and then they'll get a funding amount, and it should then be funded as part of the funding of the school. Now, I just want to mention this is another example of the worry about lack of coordination, that will this really happen, and how does that go about? And I can't say as a council member you could come to me with every lack of coordination, but I can say that I would work to get things within the government to be more organized so that we didn't have to worry that is this going to happen or not.
Can I jump in?
I think Andrew was next and then Anna. Okay, referring to Anna.
I'll start with mine then. I think the siloing issue is a huge issue. The county government does not communicate or coordinate nearly as well as it should. This is part of my background at the state level. I was on the board of the Maryland 529 program, a $6 billion public agency that helps families save for college. I stepped off the board and was tapped to reorganize and restructure it. And one of the things that I found when I was there, nobody talked to anybody. And the different departments within the agency weren't coordinating and weren't communicating, and they knew that each other existed and they understood the basic idea of what the needs were, but they actually didn't talk, and so they didn't communicate on plans, they didn't focus on making things actually get together and work. And so we knocked down those barriers, got rid of those silos, and had staff coordinate in different meetings on a regular basis and created systems in place that allowed that to happen, and as a result, it works better. And the same thing needs to happen at the county council level, and it's not just a function of the executive departments and no role for council. The primary role of the legislative branch is oversight and passing a budget. I think we lack oversight and pushing for these things. That's my background, and that's what I provide in the county council.
Well, I'm not sure, is it working? What world my colleagues live in, there is an incredible amount of coordination that happens between the school system and the county. They're joined at the hip. If by any chance these transportation issues have not been raised to the board, the school system, then I think that is the path to take to make sure that you are outlining what you're seeing are the concerns. There are specific functions that are done both by the county and the school system to address all of these issues. It's not going to be the first time that there have been these kind of problems. So as a county council member, what I would want to do is make sure that problems have solutions. I hate problems. I like solutions. I think we have to get the facts, what's happening,
Thank you,
and then
Anna.
address the
Appreciate it.
solution.
Do we have anybody else who wants to jump in? No. Yeah?
I'll try not to take too much time. I think that we always need to have more coordination. And I am also concerned that right now it must be a nightmare with all of the construction going on, so that we need to be concerned with the safety of the pedestrians and the kids and everyone else right now as we're going through this construction. I do think that everyone is in the county government means to address this, but it's impossible with such a bureaucracy to get everyone together unless somebody makes an effort to bring them together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to jump ahead to our next infrastructure question. Our neighborhoods have aging water and other utility lines that have outlived their useful life and are in immediate need of replacement. In addition, our roadways have not been resurfaced in a number of years. Although the county has rated many of them as very poor, development on top of aged infrastructure poses severe safety and funding issues. This is a two-part question. First, what solutions specifically would you propose? And second, does WSSC, which is a municipal utility, need more funding to deal with aging water structure and sewer lines? And how would you propose to pay for that? Two parts.
About paying for it.
Yeah. The road resurfacing backlog in the county is huge. We need to make sure that it is a priority, one of our priorities. There are so many, but we do need to make sure that the road resurfacing is a priority, especially at this time of year as things go by. With WSSC, I am especially concerned there. You want to talk about coordination. I know on my street, and probably on your street, somebody comes and digs up, and then they pave it, then another one comes and digs up, and we need to have much more coordination among the utilities themselves before we worry about giving them more money.
Anybody else? For Anna, and then Bill, and then Meredith.
Just briefly, WSSC should be having the money that it needs to do the job. You notice your water bills. There is an enormous amount of revenue that's going into WSSC. We oversee it at the state level, and we've been pushing for them to be a lot more transparent in what it is that they do with their money. So I'm not so sure that they would need additional money. I think we just need to make sure that they're using their money correctly. And there's a lot of pressure for them to do so. As far as the resurfacing, again, that is a county function. We need to ensure that that department is functioning as it should, that it's got a priority, that it has clear information about the state of different roads, that it is moving in an effective way. That is the oversight and management that I think the council can do over the functions that are executive functions. So we understand what the functions are, we just have to make sure that they work.
Thank you, Anna. Bill?
So I hate to sound like a broken record, but again, this issue comes back to the development that's going on in the county. We, if you live probably nearby, I guess most of you probably are in the neighborhood here, and you probably remember some of the water mains that have broken in Bethesda along Wisconsin. And the cause of those is when you develop a property that had a small courtyard apartment and build a high-rise and then try to plug into the main water system that is aging and can't facilitate that capacity, it ends up bursting. And we need to make sure that we ask developers to invest in upgrading our infrastructure when it's needed. We can't continue to subsidize development with our property taxes for the infrastructure and the schools. If you're going to build here, it needs to benefit our residents, not create a burden for us.
These kinds of issues are the reason that I said earlier that we're at a tipping point when it comes to getting our infrastructure catching up with our development. First, the WSSC. WSSC has had increases 15 years in a row. So it's not about their funding. And the county appoints the commissioners for the county side of it. It's a bi-county agency. We need to appoint commissioners who put the public interest of Montgomery County over the interest of the employees of WSSC. And we need to demand more accountability and set performance standards for the work that WSSC does. That's the first thing. The second thing is on the road paving. government has to have priorities, and the first priority is to meet the basic functions of government. And as far as I'm concerned, having roads where you're not worried about what's going to happen to your car wheel is one of those kinds of priorities. So I would prioritize our budget, schools, and according to our true most important needs.
Thank you, Meredith. Bill, I'm sorry, Jim.
So, I guess I always thought there was coordination. First the county comes and paves the road, and then WSSC comes and digs it up. Isn't that the way it works? So joking aside, I think so I am a plumber pipe fitter for a number of years before I started wearing a suit and tie. And I think it's imperative, pipes age, piping technology changes, piping needs to be updated, and I think when there's development in place, that is the perfect opportunity to assess the developers the price of that upgrade.
Thank you. And I think I have one more from Andrew.
Yeah, I think this reinforces we need prioritization in the budget. I agree that WSSC doesn't need more money. It's not a resource issue, but the paving of roads and the transportation is a resource issue. We need to do a better job of prioritizing education, transportation, economic development in the budget and not get sidetracked funding other things that are less priorities for people's quality of life or the future of our economy and our kids and for our ability to pay for all of the priorities that we have in terms of growing our small business space. And so we absolutely need to focus on that and provide better oversight at both the state and the local level, because it is partially a state function with WSSC to make sure that this is happening properly. But it's not a resource issue, it's a management issue, it's a resource issue, it's an accountability issue. And we need a council member who has a background in actually scrutinizing billions of dollars of contracts, holding public agencies accountable. I have that background, that's why I'm running for council.
Thank you, Andrew. Pete has a lot of support on this one.
Thank you. I agree with most everything that was said up here, but I'd like to also add the point of it's a relationship issue too. It's very, very important that the county council maintains an excellent relationship with the members that represent us in the General Assembly in Annapolis. And for instance, Delegate Corman's here, as noted. As the former president of the Maryland Mayor's Association, I saw Mark out in the community outside of his own district, working very closely with municipalities and other entities in the county. And we need that kind of back and forth relationship with our delegates and our senators so that we get the proper amount of funding to come back to Montgomery County, the taxes that we already pay.
All right, I'm going to jump in here with one more new question, then we're going to have one question from the audience that just came in. Recently, as some of you might know, Montgomery County, a party to the Oldak, a foreign company with very poor financial credibility, Wiggle gas merger, signed off on approving this merger agreement. The merger was deemed harmful to consumers by parties such as the Office of the People's Counsel and the Public Service Commission's own staff. Even the chairman of the Maryland Public Service Commission authored a blistering dissent in the Oldak merger, which the commission ultimately approved. How do you plan to fight the ratepayers who need first quartile quality service at reasonable rates when it comes to gas, electric, water, and other necessary utilities? Take it away. This is a problem.
Excuse me, could you please explain that in 5-year-old language?
Thank you.
I will try. I have been meeting with candidates for about 6 years right now, trying to talk to them about the Maryland Public Service Commission, and it's very important that our candidates understand this. Our Maryland Public Service Commission decides on companies that will come in and acquire our currently existing companies, such as the Exelon-Pepco merger and now the Washington Gas-Alta merger. This just happened recently, and as I said, there was a almost unanimous decision by our Maryland Public Service Commission that approved this merger, and even Montgomery County, our county executive and our county council also went in with this approved merger, which is a big problem. So if nobody has any response, Jim has a response.
So I am a strong proponent of local control over utilities. And so the more localized we can do that, the better. I think the way we regulate our energy utilities and our water utilities needs to change, and I think the incentives, especially on energy use, need to change. And I think there needs to be a stronger role and a stronger voice for the consumer in that process. In Pennsylvania, we had a consumer advocate. I know we have the People's Council, but I think there's a different kind of relationship here in Maryland. The consumer advocate in Pennsylvania was a strong advocate for the consumers in the rate regulation process. So just conceptually, the idea of a local utility being bought by a multinational is something that I would never go along with.
Thank you. Next. I think it was Reggie and then Honor.
I don't have a background on this merger issue, but I think this is a good occasion to talk about the relationship between the council members, any legislators, and the advocates. There is no way for your legislators to know every issue at all times. And we don't know what issues are going to come up in the next couple of years, whether it's for the Public Service Commission, or whether it's potholes, what development, whatever it is. So what's important for the council members and for all of your legislators is to know how to work with people, to have a spirit of collaboration. There are only 9 members on the council, so we all have to talk to each other to get things done, and to know which advocates to go to when a problem arises, and to have an open door policy so that people will come in and all of the stakeholders can be involved. And to me, that is the most important skill to have at the council. Regardless of your experience, this is what we need to do, because nobody can know all of these issues. And I congratulate you, Addie, on knowing this one.
Thank you, Addie. And you and I need to talk about the Public Service Commission. My goodness. I want to leap on this issue because I want to point out that what we're doing in Montgomery County to get rid of money from major donors, from special interests, through our public financing of our candidacies. There are 4 of us here that are taking public financing. Others are not. Why do I raise this? Because it's these huge utilities, the big banks, the big corporations that have incredible influence at the state level, both in the executive and in the legislature. As long as that influence is not curtailed, you're going to have these kind of decisions. I went against the decision that had been made for Verizon, for its own benefit, to take out copper, the copper lines from our houses, but only here. 75% of the rest of Maryland is not having to remove their copper, which is a much more reliable line. The Public Service Commission could not do anything because the push was outside. Verizon had bought everybody on the county, on that executive committee. Thank you.
Anyone else? Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very familiar with this issue, and I think that the question now is how do we move forward? How do we make sure that rates are kept in check, that reliability is kept in check? And I think, with PEPCO, I think we have seen some progress recently with PEPCO. It was horrible, and now it's better. It's not perfect. I recognize that. But I think it's about raising the issue and pushing the issue and bringing together the community and bringing together the advocates and making sure that you have an effective advocate on the council and partnerships at the state level to be able to push back to ensure that level of accountability. And I would look to do that on this particular issue when it comes to the merger.
Thank you. Meredith, do you want to chime in here? Just briefly.
Yes, I'm not as knowledgeable on this issue as Abby, I must say. But the one thing I want to discuss is the approach to it. And I think as a representative, as representing you, if I would be so lucky, there's a combination of both knowing what's going on, doing your homework. And when I was on the planning board, I was known as the person who'd always read everything. And so I do my homework. But more than that, there's getting along and going along, but sometimes there's telling truth to power, too. So if for so many years we keep getting these rate increases and everybody seems to roll over, then it's time to tell truth to power and say, look, we need to shake this up. We need to do something about this. And if you know my record on the planning board, I told truth to power, and it did make a difference in some instances, and I can explain those later. I don't have enough time, or I can talk about it after this.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to an audience question. Many candidates support having developers participate, aka paying and contributing to school construction and infrastructure maintenance upgrades that will surely be impacted by development. How exactly do you propose specifically to make this happen? Anna Saul's on it.
I would not allow that to happen. Absolutely not. Developers have their own agenda and their own interests. That's why we have a school board and a school system that has expertise in these departments of how to build schools, how you ensure that they're the quality schools that are going to last for multiple years. I do think we should do, as my colleague Bill Cook so well states, they need to be paid their fair share, and they need to be covering the impact of the infrastructure cost that is caused by their development. They're not doing that now, and I believe that both the next executive and the county council have to make that change in the way that developers are getting away with murder.
Anyone else? Bill?
Thanks, Jill. So because I've talked about this already a little bit, we already have some pretty decent impact tax laws on the books. The problem is that we're not collecting them. There's a bunch of loopholes that have been mentioned earlier. There's always some overlay zone that allows them to not have to pay for roads, and they don't have to invest in the school system. And we need to cut all that out. They need to pay their fair share. You know, the fact that people want to move here and so developers want to build here is a sign that our community is successful. We have great schools, it's a great place to live, and they should be paying for the privilege to develop here. It's our community, that's the product that they're selling. So they should help, they should have to invest back in our community for schools, absolutely. That's the question, right?
Yeah, I think what we were seeing here is kind of democracy at work. You have all the people, I assume this question is representative of the folks in the room, but all of us up here got questionnaires from the Builders Association basically lamenting the high impact fees. I think the developers ought to pay their fair share, and I think it's one of the arguments, as Anna has said, for public financing and diminishing the impact of developers in county politics. If we're going to keep our infrastructure apace with growth, the only way that's going to happen is if we make the developers pay as we grow. They build so we can grow, they should pay it so we can grow. Thank you.
Meredith, you have your hand raised on that?
The subject of these impact taxes is a complicated subject because the county constantly changes them in the subdivision staging policy and in other policies. So you have to go almost project by project. But what I pledge is to be a good steward of your tax dollars and to make sure that we have tax policies for developers where they are required to pay the share that they should be paying. And I'll give you an example of something that concerns me a lot, and that's at White Flint, where the developers were exempted from paying a transportation impact tax. And instead, there was a special taxing district put on White Flint. Well, what happened in the last 6 years is that they only made about $9 million off of that, and meanwhile, the county has been advancing $64 million for different road projects, very serious amounts of money, and the PDF says, well, we'll be paid back when the tax gets better. But when is that going to happen? So this tax subject is something I'd really like to dig into.
Andrew?
Yeah, well, first I thought that the question was, what are the ideas of having more get paid? And it seems like the answers were a little bit different than the question, at least as I had understood it. But I think we have to be a little bit careful of the fact that if we charge too much, when we get to a certain point, then there isn't going to be any building, and that's the building that we need in order to grow the economy. And so there has to be a balance. And I just want to be careful that we don't go too far overboard as we vilify and create enemies of, and make sure that we get an area where we are balanced so that we can grow the economy, we can build things, but we can build in a way that can support our infrastructure, grow our revenues, and grow our economy, which I think is important. We can't do it another way. And in terms of not paying the impact taxes, that's Silver Spring, not Bethesda and North Bethesda. I just want to make sure that we clarify that there aren't impact taxes that are charged in Silver Spring, which was a legacy from creating investment in Silver Spring when that investment was lacking. So I just want to make sure that we're calling apples to apples. But I think the key here is we need to reduce the cost of building and some of the bureaucratic hurdles that don't create any additional resident input, that don't allow for any added accountability or transparency, and then make sure that the money is actually going to where it needs to, because part of the problem isn't that there's a feeling that there isn't impact taxes that are on the books that aren't being charged or that they aren't being paid, but the fact that the impact taxes that are supposed to be dedicated to actually support the infrastructure isn't ending up actually paying for the infrastructure once it gets into the county budget. And that's where I think you need fiscal oversight.
Anybody want to respond to that?
Yes. I will also take 5 minutes to make a response. I think we should be clear here. Real estate development is not economic development. They're two very different things. Real estate development does not create long-term jobs. The profits go to a very small portion of our community. If real estate development was economic development, the billions of dollars in development we've seen in Silver Spring would mean that everybody out there would be a millionaire, and they're not, trust me. That was the main thing I wanted to clarify.
Bill, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. Being someone who's been in this industry for 30 years, first starting off in the public sector, then private, now back working for the county executive, the developers do pay a very large amount of money into our economic system. They do create jobs. They also offer a lot of amenities that we get, like bike share programs and bike paths, and money that goes to school and all the impact fees. But I'm not going to tell you that they pay their fair share, but I will tell you that I think the system is flawed, and I think it's not only unfair to us as the residents, I think it's unfair to the development community, and I think the system needs to be, the slate needs to be wiped clean, and a new formula needs to be formulated, and it should be one fee for schools and one fee for transportation, and not all this back and forth and carrying on and some special fees for this and some special fees for that. It needs to be black and white and very simple, and things would work a lot better.
Can I respond to that? I think tax it. And from the people that I've been talking to throughout the community, they're upset about development. And if we had less of it, I don't think anybody would shed any tears. If we tax it, we'll have a little bit less, and we'll have more money to mitigate the impact. That means a better balance for the growth that we have. It'll be a slower pace, more manageable, and we'll have the money we need to solve the challenges that it creates.
Can I ask something?
Go ahead, Reggie.
So yes, I agree with Pete. The impact tax system does have to be fair, and it does need to be looked at. It is periodically addressed by the council. It needs to be looked at again. But I am very concerned with the way this discussion seems to be going, making developers the enemy. If we don't have any development, we don't have any affordable housing. Now, we need to be careful about where we put development and who pays for the infrastructure that we need, and making sure that we get all of this decided before the development, before construction is started. But if we don't have any new development, we will have no new affordable housing. And that means we won't have a way to decrease affordable housing, letting people live near where they work. It cuts out some travel time, cuts out idling, cuts out air pollution, saves people money, gives them more time to be with their families. We need to have affordable housing in this community, and we need development to get there.
Okay, I think Anna's was next.
Thank you.
Now we're getting into the debate we wanted to
Now
have
you have to
today.
think, yes. Well, the next council has a very important task to do. I think that we need to review what has happened in the last 8 to 10 years to what were key guidelines on when and where we built, what infrastructure impacts were there. While I was on the school board, we actually passed 2 moratoriums, and there was no construction. There was nothing there until we were able to build the access and the roads. and the capacity for the schools. I think there's something has happened, and I'm not sure because I have not been able to follow the day-to-day proceedings, but I do see fingerprints on things like the affordable housing. Affordable housing is a very generic name. Almost everybody is for affordable housing. Even some of those very wealthy apartments that have been constructed in Bethesda can be considered affordable housing. And we have made rules by which these MPDUs can be avoided. They're waivers so that they can build higher and not build MPDUs. I think we really need to review what's happened.
Meredith, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, the moderate price dwelling units is a whole different topic, and I'd love to discuss that at one point. But the discussion about development, we don't want to get into the same old, same old. Not many people, certainly I'm not proposing that there not be any development. I'm proposing that we have planned, thoughtful development that meets the needs of the residents living here now. Because we have 20,000 housing units in the pipeline around White Flint. And we don't have a plan for what that impact is going to mean. We need to have good plans. And in addition, in the last 10 years, with all of this approval of all these housing units, we have not seen an increase in our revenues. Why did they raise our property taxes by almost 9%? Because they couldn't balance the budget unless they did that. And that's because the revenues have not been coming in from the kind of development that's been approved so far. So that's the real core of the discussion.
Okay, Andrew, you have the floor.
2 points. One is, just to clarify a little bit more of misunderstanding, the waivers for density for MPDUs is if you build higher, you have to build more MPDUs. So you're trading affordable housing, a percentage of between 50% and 80% of median income, and in exchange for that, you get the allowance to build higher. Now, we could debate on what's the appropriate number for the MPDU for affordable housing, because we have desperate need for affordable housing. What's the appropriate level for where the density is and what the density is, but that's the trade-off. And if we are going to say that we have this affordable housing crisis and we need to be all in and figure out market rate and below market rate ways to solve it, then that is a discussion we absolutely have to have, and it's disingenuous not to have it. So I just want to make sure that we're calling a spade here and understanding what we're talking about. The second is transit-oriented development. The density near transit is something that we talk about. If you're for environmental sustainability, if you're for taking cars off the road, you've got to want density near transit, or else we just can't solve that challenge.
I think I'm going to, since we're talking about development and the county council as well, I think I'm going to throw out a question I hadn't planned on, which is the role of the Montgomery County Planning Board in putting together plans and updated plans for the county. A number of people have had issue with the way the planning department is run in terms of citizen involvement and just generally determining when to do a plan, or whether the plan is created by the planning board, or whether a certain development seems to be driving the planning board. Also, and the county council is the ultimate decider in the plans as well as zoning. So I just wanted to get your take on how you feel that the current system is working, whether or not you think it's working well, whether or not you think it needs to be modified, changed, and what do you think of the continuing role of the county council in the planning and zoning process?
Well, I wanted to respond to the last discussion we were having about affordable housing, because I think there were some misstatements made. Development is not a solution for affordable housing. In fact, development destroys more affordable housing than it creates. That's why I plan, when I get to the county council, to institute a net zero policy of loss for affordable housing. If you destroy 20 units of affordable housing, you must provide at least that number of units in the new development. And let's be real here. If we continue the reckless development in our county the way that we're going, you're not going to have to worry about affordable housing, because people are not going to pay $1 million for a home when they got to send their kids to a trailer park. People are not going to buy an $800,000 condo when it takes 30 minutes to drive to the supermarket. We need to fix the development, or you're not going to worry about the affordable housing.
Okay, so let's get back to the question I just posed. Reggie, why don't you take a stab at it?
Thank you. There have always been issues with the planning board. The council needs to serve as a buffer, a balance between, you've heard the word balance up here before, but it's up to the council to balance what the planners want to do in their planning for the county and what the residential neighborhoods that are already there want to see happen in that area. So there needs to be a balance for this. I think that it is, the council appoints the planning board members, and then they don't really control them. They are independent. So when we appoint the planning board members, we need to make sure that they are the kind of people who care about the residents who are already here and will take that into consideration. I know in my part of Bethesda, down on Little Falls Road and Sangamo Road, Little Falls Shopping Center, they wanted to put a postal sorting facility there. They wanted to close off one of the access members. I wanted to say, would you take a field trip down here, please? So we need to have council involvement in this.
Okay. Meredith, why don't you take it?
Yes, but the council just sees the plan at the very end of the process. And the planning process is extremely important. As, of course, I feel that way because I was one of the commissioners for 8 years. I was on the board from 1999 to 2007. But there's no way that the council can ever get into the kind of detail that the planning board can, nor do they have the professional staff that the planning board has. But in the last 10 years, in my opinion, the council has not made appointments of planning board members or a chair that will listen to residents, that is aware of the concerns of residents. Although I did see Francoise Carrier there, and she was a former chair, and she certainly did show some concern, but our recent chair, that has not been the case. So what I would say is we need to appoint better planning board members, and we need to have plans that have public amenities and benefits for our residents. The last Bethesda plan and the West Bart plan had none of that. I wrote the council at the time opposing West Bart. I testified 2 times against the Bethesda plan for these very reasons.
Steve.
I think the original question was what we thought of the process and the relationship between the current.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I think the current process is better than it was, but there is a lot more room for improvement. A couple of things that I would like to do if I'm elected to this seat is, one, at the master plan level, the county council used to go out into the community and hold their meetings. Now you have to go to Rockville on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. And if you've got family or if you're in school or other obligations, you don't always have time to go there. And I think the council needs to get back into the community. They used to go to churches and synagogues and community centers and hold a lot of the master plan meetings there. The second thing I'd like to see is the planning department treat the communities as unique and individuals, because each community has its own needs, and it's very different. Poolsville, which is in District 1, is not downtown Bethesda, and Bethesda is not Kensington.
Anyone else want to address that? Jim?
Excuse me. So I think the question that you asked was, is the system working? And I think the short answer is no. I think we've been to countless of these candidate forums, and the development decisions and development process is the #1 topic in almost every single one of them. And I think that by itself tells you the story that the process is not working. I think the issue that's been raised here tonight about accountability between the planning board and the council is imperative. But I think there's something else we might want to think about. You know, there are 65 sector plans, and there's 9 council members. And maybe we ought to think about expanding the council members, and maybe 2 council members per district, so that there are more people involved in the decision-making process that can respond to your specific needs. Because it's hard to imagine that 9 council members can be responsive to all those sector plans throughout the county.
If I can just very briefly, I don't think it's working to answer your question, and I think you're absolutely right, Jim. The concerns that we hear, not only at the forums, but as we are going around to our neighborhoods, it is a critical issue, and the next council is going to have to be, Spanish you say, ponerse los pantalones. I think they need to put on their pants and be very much firm as to what we want to see the outcomes coming from the planning board. I think we've gone backwards in the high standards that we expected from the planning board, and more important, the transparency and the outreach. So yes, I believe that we have a task to do with at the next county council.
Meredith?
There are many things we can do to improve the planning process, but I think one of the most important things we could do is return to the citizen advisory panels that used to advise the planning department throughout the planning process. And the citizen advisory panels included landowners in the area, citizens, the civic associations, all concerned residents, and it was usually about 15 to 20 people, and through that you got much more of a consensus, and the recommendations that came to the planning board often reflected in a better way the real concerns and needs of that particular community.
Anyone else? No.
Thanks. The short answer, as Jim said, is the system is not working properly. And we need to ask ourselves why. And the simple answer is because our government has been corrupted by the development industry. The main contributor to political campaigns is the development industry. So we end up with representatives who have been funded by development, and of course they're friendly to those interests. And then they go on to appoint people to the planning boards who are nice people. I've met them, and they generally see themselves as problem solvers playing a big game of Tetris, when actually they need to be advocates for our residents. When they're making these decisions and talking with the developers, they need to be standing up and saying, hey, you know what, this neighborhood needs a park. This neighborhood needs another school. They need to be the ones fighting for us, in addition to the county council. And, well, I'll leave it there, but, yeah.
Okay, well, since we're on infrastructure, I'm going to ask this question. As White Flint area becomes an urban center, attention needs to be paid to creating additional grid streets to ease traffic flow through and within the area, turning Rockville Pike into a boulevard and providing better and safer bicycle and pedestrian alternatives. What is your position on forward, well, I think we've talked about forward funding because we're already doing it. What is your position on forward funding, or whether or not the developers need to be ponying up more at the very beginning of the process?
I don't like it, but I think we have to continue doing it. The White Flint development is very important. We don't want Bethesda to be the only place with development in the county. There is a metro stop there. It's a huge property, and I think that all of the stakeholders in that neighborhood seem to have gotten together and approved of this grid of streets and many other things, and I think that we do need to continue forward funding it.
Do you think that there needs to be more attention paid to developer contributions, or do you think the county should continue to forward fund and wait for the revenues to catch up?
Well, we can't just wait. We have to also consider what other possibilities there are, but I do think the county has a responsibility to do this.
If I could just add, one of our first debates or forums was in the White Flint area. So to prepare, I read both plans. That they're enormous. I recommend it if you have trouble falling asleep. But what was very impressive to me was the level of effort and detail and technical analysis that's gone into both those plans. It's not going to be a 2-year plan. It's a multi-decade plan. And I was very impressed with the use of concepts that right now are only
favor of more pressing capital improvement needs such as schools, bus rapid transit, more convenient and frequent ride-on bus service, and support for the aging Red Line. This year, the T&E Committee recommended defunding the project and reallocating the capital authority to other projects. Do you support the elimination of this roadway and reallocating this authority to other projects? And if we could just go down yes or no, I think that'll get us through this really quickly. I'm going to start with Bill.
I'm not doing all the questions, sorry, can you read it again?
The Montrose Parkway East project, whether or not you would agree to eliminate the roadway and authorize the money for other projects.
I'm not particularly familiar with that project, so.
Reggie?
I support the council's decision to put that off. I think that the money could be better spent on transit and perhaps other projects for the area.
Bill?
Yes, I support the council decision.
Anna?
Absolutely, I support it. And I was quite surprised that the council has that kind of authority to be able to redirect that much money to projects that, in my opinion, are going to be so much better for the entire population in Montgomery County. So yes, I support it.
Andrew?
I'd be willing to put off the funding, but I'm not sure we can eliminate the road project altogether, at least at this point. I think we need more time to see what the needs are and what the long-term growth is of White Flint. But I think moving off the funding currently, because it's not currently needed, was an appropriate decision. But the second piece of the question, am I willing to eliminate the roadway altogether? I'm not sure I'm quite there yet. I need more information long-term for what the transportation infrastructure needs will be, because if we do have 50,000 employees, whether Amazon comes or not, we're going to have infrastructure needs in a maybe beyond just the metro.
Thank you. I also support the decision that was made, and that was a proposal by our county executive to delay the building the Montrose Parkway. But we need that parkway at some point, so we can't keep continuing to put it off if Amazon, as Andrew said, is coming.
I don't support the council decision on this because I think we've been working on the Montrose Parkway since I was on the planning board. I was there in 1999, and we still haven't finished it. And there's been a lot of building done that was based on that road, and yes, we're going to need it. If we're going to delay it, which are sometimes that needs to be done, then it has to go to an even higher priority. So yes, I would have agreed to it if they take all that money and put it in schools. But they did this, that, and the other thing. I'm not saying they're not good things, but let's be reliable. Let's do what we say we're going to do. Let's have a transportation plan and not just change willy-nilly. And so I say either finish the road or give the money to schools.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing up the environment, because I want to transition to another question. Stormwater management is a constant concern in our community. It impacts our roads, our streams, and our creeks. From street flooding to erosion of our streams and stream banks, which is weakening critical infrastructure even as we speak right now in Lux Manor, our community is bearing the brunt of a lot of development. How do you plan to address stormwater management in District 1 as our council member? Andrew.
Well, we talked actually at a couple of forums ago about the county executive's proposal to privatize stormwater management. There was a variety of conversations. One thing that I'm particularly concerned about is the Grosvenor Tributary Project and that impact on communities surrounding here and several other projects like it that are directly related to our stormwater management. My understanding is that the park system may be taking on more of a role in some of these streamwater management projects, but we absolutely have to fund them if we change the process that we have, because stormwater management is a huge issue. It's not just a pollution issue, but it's a quality of life issue for all of us. And if we don't ensure that we have a system that can be funded, which it hasn't been funded as it needs to be, and that we can keep up with these environmental needs and these quality of life needs, then it will affect all of us, and it will harm our property values, it'll harm our quality of life, and it'll harm the environment. We can't afford that.
Thank you. Stormwater management is not optional. There is a federal requirement to manage it, and a state requirement. And we are not meeting what those requirements are. That is part of the problem that we saw with our current county executive trying to privatize. I think that is an important issue that we must paving over everything so that water runoff is going into our creeks, into our streams, into our sewers that really cannot hold that much water. But I just had an issue with this morning. I had a constituent call me for issues with stormwater management. Why? Because they're building a Mac mansion right next to it. I called, asked the permitting, and what I got was a bit of a runaround, and the fact that if the code allows it, then it's okay. Who writes the code? Who reviews the code? We need to be able to have much more control of what is happening in the development in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Ellen. Meredith?
Stormwater management.
Stormwater management is a very serious issue in this county at a whole lot of different levels. Starting with the one that Anna just mentioned, yes. In other words, when you build one single house, it's by right, and there's no requirements for particular stormwater management. And this has been going on for a long time. That's why a lot of us have flooded basements and water coming down and wreaking havoc. So we need to close that loophole because the houses are so much larger than they were before. They're creating a lot of impervious surface, and so it needs to be addressed as a regular stormwater management issue, because otherwise the municipality has to deal with it, or the county, and we haven't done that either. It either has to be the homeowner or the municipality. But in a broader issue, for the whole environment, for the bay, we need to have the highest standards for stormwater management, and we should not be giving waivers to these buildings that are going to be built that are so much bigger than the building that they are replacing, and yet they're giving a waiver and allowing the same stormwater management system to function for the new building.
Thank you,
And
Meredith.
there's more to say too. But.
Anyone else? Jim?
So, excuse me. So I agree that stormwater management is a critical issue. I've told the story at other forums. Don and I were sitting along the Potomac, and toilet paper was bubbling up next to us. I had a discussion just this morning. Somebody disputed that this had anything to do with stormwater management. But what happens is that stormwater overloads our sewage system, and it results in toilet paper bubbling up in unpleasant places. So we need to be able to stop stormwater at its source. The Green Streets program is an excellent example of a program that works most of the time. There's some county residents who have had some very bad experiences with the way that it's been implemented, and I think those need to be addressed. But I think finding ways, and talking about the individual houses, Don and I did a renovation to our house, and one of the things that mattered was whether our footprint changed. And if our footprint changed, then we had to take additional stormwater management steps. Fortunately, it didn't. But
Thank you. Reggie?
Yeah, stormwater management, protecting our clean water is critical. It's one of the most important environmental issues we have, other than the whole climate change that might just completely turn us upside down. I am concerned at the council activity that's going on right now. Ike Leggett has proposed a plan. It's already privatized. His plan would change the way the contracts are done and supposedly save us a lot of money. If that's the case, I say we have to do it. This is a very expensive thing that we're doing here, but we have to do it. If he's got a way to save us some money, then I think we should do it. And I understand that it went through committee, and two of our council members said, no, let's just wait and let the next council deal with this, which I do not think is the way to deal with an important environmental issue. We can't just put it off.
Great. Bill?
Sure. Well, I just have two things to add. I agree with a lot of what's been said, but I think one thing we need to have a policy where when we are destroying green spaces, that the affected areas are where we try to mitigate it. For example, the Purple Line, which destroyed, what was it, like 50 acres of trees, and the county's plan to mitigate that impact was to not chop down trees up county someplace where they paid some farmer not to cut down trees. And that's not an appropriate policy for stormwater management. In addition to that, I just wanted to make a plug for the county's Rainscape initiative, which is basically if you set up a rain garden or a rain barrel or something like that in your residence, you can actually get tax breaks, which is it's a great program. So.
Thank you for mentioning that. It's available to people who are living in Wellington right now, so there's a plug.
So I am a supporter of the environment. When I was the mayor of Kensington, we designed and built the first bioretention storm drain system in the county. It's in a parking lot next to the MARC train station, which is a very transit-friendly way to get to work. And also we installed, as Bill had mentioned, the rain gardens along the town hall and the other municipal buildings within the town. They work well. In reference to the, I think it's the Green Streets program, they don't work. Not because it's a bad idea, but because the county doesn't do their job and maintain them. They get clogged up with bottles and trash that humans throw into them, debris, leaves, and so forth, and they're not cleaned and maintained on a regular basis. You can talk to the folks that have been the guinea pig for it, called Kensington Heights, next to the Parkwood development and Parkwood Elementary. It simply doesn't work unless they're maintained. If they were maintained, I think they'd be a good idea to help the environment.
All right, anyone else on that one? Okay.
They're given by politicians to attracting good-paying jobs, and we ought to reflect that in the way we compensate our county employees. And when we talk about making this a county affordable for senior citizens like myself, then it's important that they have pensions that allow them to live in Montgomery County. I support. So you asked the question, is it sustainable? And I'm not sure that's a fair question, because I would not suspect that is going to continue over the long haul. I think that's a recovery effort based on the cuts and sacrifices that were made after the 2008 recession.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also am concerned with the growth that we have seen lately in the cost of our government, of running our government. I do recognize absolutely that during the recession there were cuts and sacrifices made. So I think the issue, the question that you're asking, is this sustainable? Well, it isn't. Not if we are going to do it kind of on a short side, without a long strategic view of where we are going and where our revenues are coming. Obviously, we need to look to see, are we going to be increasing our revenue and at what rate? I believe that that is an important role of the leaders of our government, both the county executive and the county. They need to be able to understand what is the impact of those increases. We've done it at the state level. In as a member of the Appropriations Committee, we did not approve the proposed increases if the spending affordability guidelines would not tolerate it.
And so
So
thank
it
you.
has to
We're
be
going
done.
to have to move on. Andrew?
Yeah, well, the first answer to your question is it sustainable? There's nothing about our county budget that's remotely sustainable. So that's not a knock on public employees. There's nothing about the county budget that's sustainable. Unless we grow the economy, we can't sustain our current level of spending. I don't think we can cut our way out of it. I don't think we can tax our way out of it. We have to grow our way out of it. I think that too often though we blame the government's growth on public employees and we expect them to be the problem. I actually think our senior administrators in the county government are paid higher than their regional counterparts, are paid way higher than the state. You can make 40 or 50% more at a similar job at the county here than you would at the state level. So I think I would certainly start with the senior managers and their executive pay before I would start with the frontline employees and their pay. But it's possible. At the 529 program, when we reorganized and restructured it, we had public employees, we made major changes, we reformed government, we found ways to make it more efficient, to serve better, to focus on customer service. We didn't lay anybody off, we didn't cut pay, we actually raised some pay, moved people into better positions to succeed, and we changed the way the government worked and made it work better for the people it served.
Hey, Pete?
Thank you. As a county employee, I can tell you I'm not rich. There are some employees who it's opinion-based, maybe overpaid. I know a lot of that has to do with overtime, though, if you get down into it. It's the overtime pay, and that is directly related to relationship between the county and the unions, and that's something that needs to be improved and worked out in a better manner with the contracts and the various services that are negotiated between the council and the unions. But there are employees who work very hard. There was a study that was done 2 years ago looking at surrounding jurisdictions' payments, and we weren't that far off. And it's about competition. We got the top people to help run the county. But there's room for improvement. There are some that are overpaid, and there probably should be an independent group to look at it.
Hey, Meredith, did you have a comment?
We have a very fine workforce in Montgomery County. I can tell you about DPS inspectors who maybe don't deserve those kudos, but the many fine teachers, the many people that do return your call. I've had very good experiences. I've had a range, but is this sustainable? No, it is not. So we do have to live within our means. Unlike the federal government, where we can borrow as much as we want, we can't do that. We have to balance our budget. And we've been balancing it with debt. Our debt service is now our third largest expense in our county budget, the budget that was just proposed. So that's serious, and we want to be equitable and fair and respect the employees. We may be able to find ways of not filling vacancies. That's one of the first places to start, and then it doesn't count against their budget. But we need to move to change this situation and get us back on a balanced course.
Okay. I think that will wrap up the questions that we have for tonight. So each of you is now going to have a minute for a closing statement. And let's see, where did we start last time? We started with Meredith first. So we'll start with you, Bill. Go around the table.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for being here. Truly, I appreciate that you take the time to be involved in politics. It's not always easy. But we're living in really unusual and unique times, and it's important for us all to be involved, and I believe that we all have a role to play. It's great that we've had questions here tonight, and I know that we like to think that our elections are about a competition of ideas. But we know that's not totally true. It's more about how much money you can raise. And that is why I'm using public financing, which means that I can't take any money from developers or corporations or special interests. It's all small donations from residents in Montgomery County. Because when I get to the county, the only people I want to be thanking are the residents. Once again, my name is Bill Cook. Thanks for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you again to Lux Manor and Greater Farmland, and thank you all for coming out. My name is Reggie Oldak. I hope to earn your vote for June 26th. I want to remind you that this is a unique election. At least 4 of our 9 council members will be new. The county executive will be new. We need to take the time now to elect people to the council who can get to work on day one. I have the broad experience to do that. I bring a spirit of collaboration. That's the kind of leadership that I will bring to the council. I want to also tell you that I am taking public financing. I'm participating because I think special interests and big money have no place in our elections. We need to get back to representing the people. And I am not taking I'm not allowed by law to take contributions from any special interest, any big donors, and I'm not allowed to self-finance my campaign. I'm also the first candidate in the county races to reach the maximum public match. We did that last week. We have received enough donations to get the maximum public match that is allowed. Thank you.
So my name is Jim McGee, and I am asking for your vote on June 26th, or do early voting between June 14th and the 21st. We are a county in transition. We're a county that is growing and needs to grow. We need to be thinking about what our county will look like in 20 or 50 years from now. What will the metro system look like on its 100th anniversary? We need some forward thinking in this county. But we also need to preserve and build on what works. our education system, our parks and green spaces, and our public transit, which works most of the time. We also need to expand economic opportunity, educational opportunity to pre-K and post-secondary, housing opportunities so that people who work here can afford to live here, and transportation alternatives that are so that we become less reliant on cars. I too am taking public financing, and we need more than new faces on the county council. We need bold new ideas. I am that candidate.
I'm going to stand. Too short to be seen. My name is Gutierrez, as I stated. When we began this conversation, I really have enjoyed the free flow, and I think it is a good way for you to see who we are and what we bring, because you're going to have a very critical decision in June 26th or earlier. It's going to be very important because, as I said and others have said, we have a brand new government. We're going to have a new county executive and a new county council. This is not the time for you to elect somebody that's going to be learning on the job. I bring you tons of experience. Experience at the state level, at the local level, and even at the federal level, because I did work for Bill Clinton in transportation. So I think that as you make your decision, you need to see what does the job require. I will offer you the experience that is the most relevant to this job. That's passing budgets and making strong decisions. I've been endorsed by almost all the progressive organizations, and I hope you'll remember my name, Anna Sol Gutierrez. It goes from A to Z. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Friedson. Thank you so much for being here this evening and for allowing us the opportunity to earn your vote. I grew up here. This is the only community I ever called home. I'm running to ease the Montgomery County squeeze on our roads, on our schools, and on our families. I think we heard a lot tonight about who's to blame for all of our problems. At first it was developers and big businesses, then it was Amazon, and then it was public employees, and there's always someone to blame for all of our problems, and I think we need to get out of that destructive false choice that's corroding our political discourse. It's not about tearing people down. It should be about lifting people up. That's what my campaign has been all about. We've built a broad-based coalition of laborers and lawyers, of small business owners and residents, all joining together to see if we can solve the problems that we face, to provide the type of broader, more inclusive economy that lifts wages for everybody, that grows businesses, that maintains our quality of life, our high level of public services, and the fact that we take care of people who desperately need help. There are a lot of changes going on. We can't afford to ignore them. We need to take them head on. We need new leadership for a new time, and I hope to have your support to be able to do it. Thank you very much.
I just want to start by thanking our moderators this evening, as well as our sponsors. I appreciate the audience coming out this evening, and there could be other things that they could be doing with their time. Again, my name is Pete Fosselman, and I hope that you consider me when you go into the ballot. There are two responsibilities that you need as a county council member. One is land use experience, because those are many of the decisions we make in master plans. And two is the budget. I'm the only candidate sitting up here that's been an elected official, been responsible for a large budget, and walked a master plan through the entire process in the county process. I hope that I can earn your vote on June 26th, and again, early voting starts June 14th. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you all tonight and to answer the questions, and thank you all for holding this forum. I guess you've seen I'm a person who likes to get into the nuts and bolts of things, and I learned about these things when I was on the planning board for 8 years, where we had a $100 million budget. So I also know about budgets. That's 8 years of going over those budgets and fighting for what I wanted in the budget, like I fought for the baseball initiative. Because I got on the planning board because I fought for ball fields for little kids. And then when I got on it, I worked with the planning board members and the council for a ball field initiative, which is still in the budget right now. And there are parks in the county that are here because of my work with communities and with other people. And that's what I want to do with you. I want to work on all these issues, and I want to be accessible to you. Because that's just the way I've always been and the way I am now. I love this county. the residents. We're an amazing group of people. I learn every day from you all. And I want to serve you as your representative on the county council. And remember, I'm at the end of the line for this, and I'm also the last name on the ballot. Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank all of our candidates for coming tonight and spending a couple of hours coming into our community. I think it's really important for you to come out and see what we're all about, and we appreciate all of your time. So please give all of our candidates a big round of applause for being here tonight. I also want to thank Lux Manor Citizens Association, Adam Milstein, for co-sponsoring this event tonight. I want to thank our volunteers who put this together, Sharon and from Lux Manor and Toby from Greater Farmland. I want to thank our timekeeper for keeping us and our volunteers in the back. I want to thank all of you. Don't forget, early voting starts June 14th for the primary. And the actual primary date, if you want to come to the polling place, which is actually right here, for at least for the Greater Farmland folks, on June 26th. So again, thank you all for coming, and I hope you found this educational. And please do get out and vote, because that's what counts. Thanks so much.